Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Menken. I'm the Executive Director of the Adam Smith Society, and welcome to today's discussion with John James on entrepreneurship and opportunity in America. The Adam Smith Society works with MBA students and professionals from around the country and really around the world to promote discussion and debate around the broad societal benefits of capitalism. If you'd like to learn more, please visit us at adamsmithsociety.com. And our annual conference, our national meeting, is coming up online this year from June 7th to June 9th. It's a great program. I encourage everyone to visit our website and register for our national conference. Just a quick run of show for today. After a quick introduction of Mr. James, he and I will be having a conversation for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. Please submit your questions in the chat box to the right of your screen throughout the broadcast, and we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can. And right now, to introduce Mr. James, I'd like to hand it over to Brady Heydrich. He is the Smith Soc chapter president at the Michigan Ross School of Business. Thanks for being with us today, Brady.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you to all for joining us this afternoon. Like you mentioned, my name is Brady Heydrich. I'm a current MBA student at Michigan Ross and the chapter president for the Adam Smith Society. Super excited to be able to introduce John James here today before our discussion. John James is the president of James Group International, a veteran of our Operation Iraqi Freedom, and a former candidate for the U.S. Senate for the state of Michigan. After graduating from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, John became a Ranger Qualified Aviation Officer and served with distinction in Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he logged more than 753 combat flight hours, leading 2 Apache helicopter platoons. He earned a Combat Action Badge and 2 Air Medals during his service. John earned a master's degree in supply chain management from Penn State University and an MBA from the University of Michigan. As president of James Group International, John grew his family business into a major trading partner with Michigan's auto industry. John served on the Michigan Mobility Council and Veterans Trust Fund Board, and currently serves on Detroit's Workforce Development Council. With that, I'll hand it back to Greg.
Thank you, Brady. Mr. James, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. It's really an honor, and first and foremost, thank you for your service to our country. It's an honor to be with you today.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to my continued service and wherever the good Lord would send me. And today, we're going to start with the Adam Smith Society.
All right. Well, God bless. Thank you so much. Mr. James, you've spoken a lot about the American dream and your own family. And I thought we might be able to kick off today and just sharing your family story with us, what your own family overcame, and how you came to be running this hugely successful business and so involved with American life today.
Well, it's been very important to me to share my family's story about the American dream, because for so many people, that's exactly what it is. It's a dream. It's a fantasy. It's out of reach. It's something that you hear about in fairy tales and storybooks about being able to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and being able to work hard, keep your nose clean, get an education, and succeed. And that's not the case for too many people around the country. So one of the biggest reasons why I ran, one of the biggest reasons why I serve is because I feel like those of us who have blessings have an obligation to be blessings to others, using the opportunities that education and capitalism and mentorship and networking bring us to kind of help other people along. I was raised by a pair of Democrats from the Jim Crow South who taught me to believe that not to accept table scraps, but the United States of America itself is my birthright. And by doing the right things, by putting myself in the right circles, I could be in a better position to help others. My parents got that mentality from a generation that knew that the only way out of desperation in 1941 and earlier in Mississippi was through education, staying out of trouble. Because before my father was my grandfather, who was amazing. Before him was a sharecropper. Before him, slave. We come from a very long line of people who started out in this country with nothing. 400 years of slavery, and I got the opportunity to run for U.S. Senate twice. I'm currently sitting in a building that I own and have a company that's growing north of $125 million. That came as the result of God's grace and love, and also the result of a lot of hard work of people before me. My father was born in Starkville, Mississippi in 1941, and he actually lived directly across the street from Mississippi State University. When he was growing up, a school that my grandfather helped build. My father couldn't go because he was black, but even despite of some of the worst economic, worst social times for African Americans, my father was raised to believe that he wasn't a victim. My father was raised to believe that dependency wasn't his destiny. And he did everything in his power, even though things around him were out of his control, to try to make himself better, pursuing education at the black school, Mississippi Valley State University, graduating, pursuing economic opportunity in Michigan, where people were moving to the Motor City, as it were, for those jobs. Having the opportunity to serve his country, being an officer in the United States Army, becoming a lieutenant, serving in Vietnam, coming back after honorably being discharged, and starting a company with one truck, one trailer, and no excuses. My father had a remarkable opportunity, and the benefits of capitalism, among many others, are what helped afford him with that opportunity to survive, thrive, and excel, to the point where he's able to realize his portion of the American dream was not just making money, but in making sure the people around him could be safer, more provided for, his family, and those in his community. And so now, in what we have the ability, and I believe the obligation, to take his sacrifices, his efforts, and take what we have right now, to use what we have to leverage capitalism as a tool, that has been proven for centuries in the past, to take this opportunity to make our society better, and I'm excited to discuss that today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. For those that may not be familiar, can you just tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. We actually headquartered in Detroit, in downtown Detroit, an automotive logistics company. We specialize in warehousing and distribution, manufacturing and assembly, and supply chain information systems. And last June, almost a year ago, I started a trucking company from scratch. I have a great team here, and we had to innovate because we all know COVID. We were really struggling to satisfy customer demands while also being sensitive to our community. Our business was classified as an essential workforce because we are in the supply chain, providing everything from heavy manufacturing equipment in the chemical supply chain. But in addition to that, we were also, we volunteered to distribute hundreds of thousands of meals, PPE and medical equipment, and supplies to folks who desperately needed it around the area. So we met a need. We saw a need. We met it, and so right now we are solidly in the value-added space in the automotive industry. When I started the company in 2012, we were about 35 million top line, and now we're about 125 million, and have a number of great opportunities. In fact, after this meeting, I'm heading a little bit north on 75. I have a business meeting. We might be pulling an additional contract from another auto supplier. So cross your fingers, wish me luck. We're still growing.
Good luck. Good luck. Well, that's a great story, and congratulations on all your success. I remember in learning a little bit about you, we here at the Adam Smith Society always talk about free market and how regulation impacts people like yourself, people like your parents. And I recall in one of the clips about you in the past, your father, when he first started the business, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had a hard time getting his business off the ground because of regulations related to interstate commerce. I'm not sure if I had that quite correct, but I do recall that. And tell me a little bit about what he had to deal with and how that informs your view of capitalism and free markets and the importance of allowing people to do work.
Sure. I mean, I think we'd all agree. All government is not bad. Government overreach is bad. I believe that when you have government doing what it's best at and allow us to do what we're best at, innovate, create, and help make lives better for our employees and for our communities, that's what we want to do. Regulations that are neither science-based nor based in common sense are things that don't help anyone. The regulations that my father faced were essentially regulations that stifled competition, propped up monopolies. My father, in 1971, when he started, was just a little guy, and he started, and we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary. If you were able to do some quick math, 71 to 2021, 50 years we're celebrating. And in September of 2021, my father hauled his first load of beer from Detroit to Milwaukee, and he got into, now how do you get from a load of beer to one load of beer to an export consolidation with a company with global reach? How do you get from one load of beer to, in a single generation, a 9-figure successful and growing business? Well, capitalism. My father saw a problem, and he met it. Actually, his brother in Chicago someone missed a shipment, and so my father said, look, I'll rent a truck. I'm not doing anything this weekend. I'll get a trailer. I'll load this up. I'll go over to Chicago. I'll drop this load off, and he makes a little bit of money, and he has some fun with his brother. Brother owned a liquor store. Goes back, but guess what? He's empty. And so he does this a couple of times, and it's fun. He gets to party, hang out with his brother, help his brother out, and he's making some money, but he's breaking even for his time. He already has a day job working labor relations at Chrysler. And so he was like, okay, well, he's thinking, and he has to drop off some paperwork, and he stops by a manufacturing facility right outside Chicago, and to pick up this the labor paperwork, but there was a strike on. And they're like, James, you have a truck? And he's like, yeah, sure. Can you take these parts back over to Detroit? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He ended up making more on that load on the backhaul than he did making the previous month. And he was like, there might be something to this. Well, lo and behold, he made some people mad. He's crossing state lines, because the geography, you're going from Michigan into Indiana into Illinois back up to Wisconsin. Crossing state lines is interstate commerce. And now federal regulations get you, and he can't practice over the road on interstate. And so he had to fight all the way up to the Supreme Court for between 71 and 78. He actually didn't end up winning, but the actions was able to garner so much attention that this was not only a win for him to be able to practice it and grow his business, but it was a win for small businesses all over the country, not just for Black businesses, but business, not just for him, but for everyone. And he didn't see himself as a freedom fighter or anti-regulation, because he's not. Right. But he just wanted to be able to compete. He wanted to be able to grow. And he was innovating, solving problems along the way, and was able to take his trucking company, move it into other logistics opportunities, and able to diversify from there. So I'm really proud of my dad, and that wouldn't have been possible under too many other systems of government to beat those regulations and to be able to help solve people's problems and needs. And I'm proud of him.
It's a fascinating story. Mr. James, we're getting a little feedback on your mic there, maybe rubbing it up against the deck or something like that. I don't know if you could just kind of...
Maybe I can hold it up.
Hold it up, maybe.
Better?
Yeah, I think that might help, but thank you. So let's talk about capitalism and some of the perceptions of capitalism today. There's a lot of talk about growing sympathy for socialism, and however you want to define socialism among young people today, and that's largely our audience. What kind of dangers do you see in this trend, and what do you think can be done to counteract it and to promote a positive narrative about the true societal benefits of capitalism?
Well, the worst thing that can happen is we continue to go into each other's corners and shout at each other from the left and right wings. I believe that those who believe that capitalism works just can't stick our flag in the ground saying socialism sucks and expect people to follow us. You have people who are genuinely hurting, who've been failed by the system, who are desperately hurting. Right now, there are businesses just like mine who are being hurt by. There's an unemployment and a labor crisis going on simultaneously, and people who seek to oversimplify it from one side will say, well, they're just lazy people who don't want to work. Well, not necessarily always true. Some people on the other side would say that market power has shifted to the labor force and they're demanding higher wages. Okay. Some other people would say, that right now, naturally, this is temporary because you're moving into summer, and there are people who, while schools are shut down, rely heavily on the education system, not just to inform their children, but to provide food assistance and to provide childcare. And so there's that natural barrier to giving people back to work, especially when you take a look at the April job numbers. And most of the jobs, if not all, if I'm not mistaken, of the over 200,000 jobs are created, were in male-dominated industries. So what's that tell you? That our women are continuing to fall behind, and our children are continuing to fall behind, and our economy can't grow at the rate that it needs to because our education system, both for the inputs that we're providing into capitalist society, into business world, but also in order to jumpstart our economy to recover from the COVID crisis of last year, are being impeded by the crisis of the moment. I think that we have to come up with more real world, non-theoretical answers to the problems that people are facing today, and being able to look at economic theory and point to why this should be working. It doesn't work after you leave the campus in Ann Arbor. That's why working and running a business, I spend a lot more time on my floor than I spend in this office, because the business isn't getting done in this office. The business is happening out there on the floor. The business is happening out there on the road. And just listening from and learning from the people, recognizing where they're hurting and addressing their concerns, listening to innovations coming from them, they'll be able to give you the best answers. So when you take a look at the way particularly the education system has failed Americans, all Americans, to take a look at the system like capitalism and say that it is inherently flawed, is I believe in an oversimplification that is massively problematic, misleading, and dangerous, because it's going to force us. It's distracting. You look at the outputs rather than the inputs. What I believe we should be doing, and whether you're an advocate of socialism or capitalism, I think that we can all agree that we need to spend more time looking at the inputs and addressing the inputs into our capitalistic system, and addressing the inequities that we're seeing in schools, socioeconomic inequality, the inability for people to excel and exceed. Because when you give everybody the tools that they require to be successful in a capitalist society, then I believe that that's long term how we're all going to be successful. So right now, for people who are hurting, I'm not going to be able to go out there and say work hard and do your best when you look at the literacy rate amongst adults in say places like Detroit that struggles to get north of 50%. I'm not going to be able to talk about the niceties of competition in fair market for people who are struggling to feed their kids. We're going to need to figure out some kind of logical, reasonable way to cooperate until we can bring everybody up to the point where folks can compete equally on equal footing. I believe that capitalism is the best method to do that. But there are people who are hurting, and people are going to go to where they're going to get the most support. It's human nature, and you can't fault people for it. So I think that those of us who are have the luxury on a Tuesday afternoon to listen to a talk like this, have an obligation to take this time and the opportunity and the resource and the tools that we've been given to make life better for those who don't have these resources. Because we can't expect people to turn away a stimulus check when there's no other alternative for too many people to survive.
So let's explore that a little further if we can. You talked a little bit about education and some other things. How can we open up opportunity for more access to the American dream for more people? What kind of ideas? What kinds of things can we be doing there?
Well, I think that the best thing we can be doing is address the American education system for what it is. It is disproportionately negatively affects African Americans, minorities, and those in white areas that are economically impoverished. Our education system is doing exactly the opposite of what it was created to do, which was help us move forward as a society. Our education system currently is a one size fits all assembly line approach where everybody is pushed through in a single cohort. There's no attention to the intrinsic value of the individual student and as a whole. Now, what individual teachers are doing, yeoman's work. What individual caretakers are doing, great, wonderful work, servants to society, and deserve all of our accolades and resources. But as a whole, I believe that most of us can agree that the education system is failing our youth. And I think that taking an honest look at any process that routinely, particularly in impoverished areas, whether they be Black or white, urban or rural, that are graduating kids from 12th grade in many cases with 4th, 5th, 6th grade reading levels, is something that we need to take a look at. Again, looking at the inputs rather than hyperfixating on outputs. Again, I think that doing things that ensure that our teachers and our children are the safest and most successful, and eliminating the digital divide in both our urban and rural areas. Looking at options like year-round school, boarding for at-risk youth, increasing mental health professionals, social workers, forming public-private partnerships in education, recognizing that our children are individuals, looking at particularly how we're failing males in our school system, and taking honest looks at what we're doing, and doing this without threat of being canceled or being shouted down, but really and truly taking an honest look at what we can do to make our future better and brighter. Because honestly, I don't care whether you're in business or on the battlefield. I've talked to folks in both, leaders in both areas, and they're going to take the people who are going to help accomplish the mission. I'm getting business not because I'm Black, but because I'm good. Now, have I gotten opportunities? Have I gotten into spaces because there have been focuses on providing opportunities for African Americans, for younger people, for veterans? Absolutely. But if you don't perform, you don't stay. And I think that I'm able to stay because I've been given the tools. So what can we do to give more people more tools? Let's talk about that. And I think that capitalism will be seen by more as something that's more approachable and not just a dream.
Mm-hmm. So let's follow up on that a little bit. You talked about your own success in business. For you or any business person out there, whether it's a big corporation or small business, what obstacles are you seeing to entrepreneurship, either for yourself or to others? And how can we help these new entrepreneurs and startups really flourish?
The biggest obstacle to entrepreneurship, I believe, well, let me back up. I actually saw something. I'm going to totally butcher it, but Elon Musk has been out in the world, on out there in our perception. He's everywhere, guys, everywhere. I feel bad bringing up Elon Musk without a picture of Doge in the background, but
you're gonna move the market. You're gonna move the market.
Oops.
No.
But he made a comment on Clubhouse during an AMA maybe a couple weeks ago. And if you're listening, maybe you can give us a comment on what exactly he said. But it was something along the lines of, somebody asked him, like, what comment could he give to inspire entrepreneurs? What could he give to motivate entrepreneurs? And his response was, if I have to motivate you, don't be an entrepreneur. And I thought that was extremely accurate and poignant, because it's true. Who was there to motivate my dad when he was hauling freight on I-94 between Detroit and Milwaukee in the snow in January? Who was there to motivate him when his knuckles got cut to the bone when he was changing a tire on the side of a road in pitch black dark? Who was there to motivate him when he came back exhausted, plopped down on the side of the bed, missed the bed, actually, my mom tells it, woke up an hour and a half later, then to put on a suit and go to a business meeting after driving a truck? There was something inside of him. And I would dare say that there's something inside of every entrepreneur that's not just about making the money. because the money doesn't come in first and fast. It's not just about that temporary tactical win. There's something bigger that entrepreneur is trying to solve. There's something bigger that entrepreneur is trying to do. And finding that purpose is that intrinsic motivation, not just to make you better, but to make those around you better and society better. And recognizing that my father probably sat there in that truck by himself on those thousands of hours on the road, asking himself from 71 to 78, knowing that he could lose his license at any time. Why am I doing this? I feel stupid. I'm wasting my life. I'm missing opportunities. I'm waiting and I'm delaying starting my family. But there was something in him that kept him going. And there's something in you that will keep you going despite all the odds. So the number one thing that I would say, based upon my personal experience and the lessons that I've learned from my dad, is that the win is not going to come quickly. The win is not going to come first. My own personal experience, I mean, we all know I've run 2 Senate seats. I've lost both of them. But I look back on my history, and I haven't succeeded the first time on anything that I've done. Even in high school, I had to go to summer school first before I got into Brother Rice. Before I got into West Point, I had to go to prep school first before I got into West Point. When I graduated West Point, I didn't get into Ranger school. I had to go to pre-Ranger. And when I failed that, I had to go back through failed Derby phase and then went all the way through 2 times through Ranger school. I didn't get the Apache first time. I had to go through an extended course before I flew an Apache. I didn't get my wife the first time. She turned me down. And so I think that element of perseverance, when we look out there on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and we see the results, the outcomes of what people have, we say, how do I get that? I need that. I want that. And then we think it's going to happen in a week. We think we're going to be able to raise that capital in a year. And we think that we're going to be able to do it lickety split because somebody else did it. Well, you may not have seen their struggle, and you may not know their purpose, and you may not see where they started from or how lucky they got or the networks they have. But I believe is that perseverance, that purpose inside you that keeps you driving. And I think that is what's absolutely essential for entrepreneurship. And that is possible when you have the ability to actually to work hard, because under a socialist system, the power shifts not from those who can break into the opportunity, but from those who can break into the networks of the oligarchy, into the networks of the powerful. And it's a lot easier to progress upward in a capitalist system because those who have the money are motivated to make more, right? And so in order to make more, they have to, and again, we live in a flawed system that we have to make better. I acknowledge that. But in general, people who are in business are motivated to employ more people, giving them money, giving them more capital, and hopefully more opportunity to excel. Whereas in a capital or in a socialist or a leftist system, then people who have power tend not to give it back. So I think that the most important thing for any entrepreneur to know is to know that it won't come quickly, and to know that there has to be purpose underlying it, other than just making money. Because the money's important, but if you're just doing it for the money, then you'll probably quit sooner than maybe an Elon Musk or maybe my father, John James.
Right. Well, I want to get into some audience questions in a moment. But before we do, I was going to ask you one last question. And as it turns out, a member did ask this question. So I want to close this portion. And then, Brady, I'll invite you back on to ask a couple questions as well. Liz Jesse, member of ours, asked, and I can ask the same question, that there are increasing accusations that capitalism itself is inherently racist. And we'd like to hear your perspective on that and your response to that.
I believe that saying that capitalism itself is inherently racist is a commentary, an unfair commentary on our fellow Americans. I think Charles Barkley said it best when he said that he believes that most people are good people, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I believe that what we see on the news is politicians and pundits driving us against each other to maintain their power and their ratings. I believe that capitalism as a philosophy cannot be inherently racist. just like a car can't be inherently dangerous, but somebody who's drunk getting behind the wheel can kill somebody. I believe that, again, if you want to take a look at something, you want to take a look at systemic racism. You want to take a look. People like to point fingers at folks in red MAGA hats, but they're not pointing at the issue that there are people in black mortarboards walking across the graduation stage who can't read above a 7th grade level, because they've been in a system for 12 or 13 years and they didn't get the tools they needed to be most successful. Now you ask yourself, who's going to have more of an impact on that young man or woman's life? An overwhelming majority of those who happen to be poor and or black, minority, whatever, is going to be the failed education system that is run increasingly by white liberals. Now, this is something that transcends politics, race, gender, and I think that regardless of what's going on, I think that we have to take a hard look at the education system, because when you take a look at folks who are hurt the most by school being shut down, it's not the people like my kids, the blessed among the blessed, who can afford a private schooling, who can afford tutors and things of that nature. This is going to further increase economic inequality. And then we're going to point at capitalism as being racist. No. We have to go back to when the entire year of the 2021 school year, people shut down with no explanation, and there was very little effective alternative presented, because any talk of that would either not get support or people would get shouted down. This is something that we have to take a look at, and you have special interests who will get out there and say that they somehow care more about the children than the parents of those children. I'm extremely passionate about not just resources to serve our children, but also adults. What are we doing along a workforce development, but not just workforce development, but being allowing people to upskill their existing skills while still able to earn a living? There's a lot of work to be done in our education system. And if we want to talk about systemic racism, if you want to talk about results, you look at for 50 years, Black folks have been failed by the education system, and having less tools to compete. But it's just fine. It's just fine to have folks go through and continue to do things the same way without addressing the honest truth, when really the honest truth is we need better alternatives for folks in poor rural areas, poor urban areas, and those who are disproportionately negatively affected by policies of the left are actually African Americans. So if you want to take it, if somebody wants to say that capitalism is inherently racist, then we have to start with the inputs. We have to start with what I believe is the inherently racist education system that is systemically holding Black and brown kids back. Overwhelmingly Black males. The school to prison pipeline, literacy rates. The evidence is endless families falling apart, and we're just not looking at it. Mm-hmm. So we must do something about our education system, and fine, we can have that debate. We can talk about inequities and racism, but we have to take a look at who's running our education system and who is most damaged by it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. James. At this point, I want to encourage everyone to please submit your questions. To kick things off, I want to bring back online Brady, again, president of our Smith Side chapter at Ross, to kick things off.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Mr. James, again, for your time today, sharing, a really impactful story and incredible insights. We've talked a lot about opportunity for Americans, and a lot regarding education, but a lot of in terms of kind of K through 12, and I'd like to drill in a little bit more to post-secondary education, if you don't mind, really kind of regarding the increasing costs that we've seen, and wondering what your perspectives are on, do these rapidly increasing costs limit the opportunity for Americans by putting a ceiling on certain individuals in society? And do you think that there's another answer outside of free or universal college to maybe limit this moving forward?
Look, everybody doesn't need to go to college. I mean, I have two master's degrees and an undergraduate from West Point. I'm probably I have more pieces of paper on the wall than most people. I understand the value of education, but not all, and certainly not the best education will you find in a book in a classroom. The best education I think you can possibly get is out in the real world, and I think that the college industrial system that is support. When was the last time you saw a popular coming of age movie that was about a trade school? And when you look at other alternatives, like maybe getting into the military, serving your country, when you look at the military movies are either a joke, they're farces, or they're social commentaries on the evils of war, which war is evil. But when you take a look at these, all you see is Animal House and glamorizing going to school and partying. And school is fun, but the purpose of going to school and getting an education should be to better yourself, to better society. And so we create this glamorized image of what college should be, this fun utopia, when really it should be to get the tools that you need to be successful. When you take a look at the courses, I mean, some would even call it, if this were out in the real world, some of the situations we're putting our kids in could even be construed as predatory. Back in the late aughts, like 2007, 8, before the economic recession, Kathleen Madigan, actually one of my favorite comedians, made a joke about being able to get a loan for $400,000 as a birthday clown. And then you look at this and you're like, well, who is giving a birthday clown $400,000 to buy a house? What would be that birthday clown's ability to pay that back, and not just to pay the bank back, but be in a position to continue the rest of their lives? Well, we have people taking out exorbitant loans, which, talking about racism in the education system, Black kids have overwhelmingly more debt than their white counterparts, and these are barriers. And so if I'm getting an education in an occupation that I have very little chance of paying that back, then now, and by the way, other debt, there are ways to work out other debt, but not educational debt. The schools get their money. The schools with these billion-dollar endowments get their money, but the kids get screwed. And so there's education reform that needs to take place, so that our kids are given the opportunity, are given the tools that they need to be successful, and that the most powerful among us, namely these universities, that I believe are taking advantage of this idealized just idea of going to school and having fun, and you're going to be able to work hard without the tools, I think is absolutely necessary. Again, we're taking a look at educating, and we're teaching the wrong stuff. And I really think that by refocusing on the inputs, doing everything that we can to level the playing field, allow people to be successful, I believe that capitalism will work more efficiently and effectively. And I think that we absolutely have to move to that level, because kids are hurting right now. And you think about generations that are graduating right now, a lot of these kids, I mean, born like on 9/11, right? I've gone through a couple recessions and a global pandemic, and now we're about to push them off in the world and say, by the way, a little bit of the time that you were supposed to be being educated, you were behind a computer screen. Good luck. And by the way, if you get into school, in order to get into the best school, you're going to have to lever up with debt. And so you're going to have to go to some place to work your tail off, and you're going to delay getting married, buying a house, having kids. But oh, by the way, the birth rate's declining, and you're going to now jeopardize Social Security for people later on in life, even yourself. So But we're also going to need you to sign up for healthcare because we need your young, healthy body to subsidize everybody else's. So the situation that we're putting our young people in is a crisis waiting to happen. And we have to have more leadership who is willing to step up and have the hard conversations, bring up the tough positions, and be able to say, look, I'm not afraid of being canceled because somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to change this, and we need to do something about it because we're staring down the barrel of people who are going to be increasingly dependent on the government because the government failed them to begin with.
Definitely, yes. I think that makes a lot of sense. And kind of, moving outside that to the kind of opportunities more from maybe an entrepreneurship side. We see a lot in the media right now, talking about the growth predominantly within tech of these massive organizations that are nearing monopoly status. I'm curious to hear kind of your perspective on allowing free markets to function and capitalism to allow these big tech companies to grow to their massive size, but countering that and making sure there still is the competition, the lower barriers to entry to allow entrepreneurs and smaller companies to be able to compete in the marketplace.
So I would say that where monopolies exist, the people suffer. But I believe in the truest of forms in a free market, there's still opportunity for innovation. I think just today, Facebook, I think I saw something, Facebook was freaking out that Starbucks would remove its page from Facebook. That's amazing. Now you have the billionaires fighting the billionaires, right? Now you have these massive social media platforms being called on the carpet by an equal. Now you're looking at a situation where you have the disintermediation and the Facebooks and the Twitters aren't going to be able to keep up. You're seeing these things in the automotive industry where you used to have the big three undisputed GM, Ford, Chrysler, but Chrysler was just bought out for maybe the third or fourth time since I've been alive, and now it's called Stellantis. It's basically a takeover of PSA of FCA. And now it's Stellantis and General Motors and Ford. And those are just the American three, so to speak. You're not only dealing with the Japanese car companies, but you're dealing with competition from California, China, and all kinds of people getting into that space. You're looking at all kinds of competition popping up. And I believe that when you have these giants, these monopolies, they distort the market. And I believe that when you have more players, when you have more competition, you provide more options and more sources. And these large giants are able to distort the regulations, the rules as they are to play to their advantage. But as you have common sense deregulation, you now make it more easy for the little guy, like my dad with one truck and one trailer, to compete with the largest companies, which is, I believe, a benefit of deregulation in the capitalist system that would not be in place in areas that would have regulations that would protect these big boys. So I think you're going to start seeing more of this accountability of large, particularly tech companies. And I think it's good because I think that disruption in our education, in our social media world is definitely long overdue. I think that getting ideas out there in the public space when we need more creativity. I mean, I'm just going to kind of go off on a tangent for a second. I'm totally sick of these movie remakes. I mean, how many more superhero movies can you possibly make? And Donald Glover, one of my favorite artists, made a comment recently that he's looking at his peers in the entertainment industry, and they are not testing their boundaries. They are not perfecting their craft. They are not innovating their skill set because they're afraid of being canceled. I think that particularly in the social media space, the more options that people are given, the more opportunity we have to communicate and speak freely without being bullied, because that's crap. Then I think that that you're going to have more ideas out there, and society will be made better for it.
I think we can all agree that disruptive innovation is beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, Facebook is the Philip Morris of our time. I think that the mental health devastation that is wrought on our people, particularly our children, will be felt in decades. We're going to have to deal with it. We're not talking enough about the mental health issues that we're seeing, because social media is the toilet bowl of the internet, and that needs to be addressed. But addressing that from a government standpoint shouldn't be our knee jerk. I think that what Starbucks is doing with Facebook is exactly appropriate. Peers holding peers accountable.
Thank you, Brady, so much for joining us. We're going to just wind down shortly here. I want to get to another question from one of our members, and this ties back to education, trade schools, and the future of jobs and work. So the question comes from Alexander. A lot of Americans are concerned with jobs being automated away, and for many, not having a college education means not having access to better jobs. Again, how can trade schools be promoted in such a way that acknowledges the way jobs are changing?
Well, I think that there's trillions of dollars being pumped into the economy, and I mean, as long as the money's out there, I hope that our political leaders have enough real life experience to understand exactly what to do with it. You look in California, and I think Gavin Newsom's trying to buy some votes by giving more STEMI checks, and I don't think that's necessarily going to long-term benefit the people who desperately need it the most. Of course, I've already talked about how education, I believe, is fundamental for our nation's economic growth, our national security, and the long-term path to prosperity for everyone, regardless of race, color, and creed. But to your question, mothers and fathers need to feed their babies now. Right? All this theory isn't going to make a lick of difference with a baby crying at 3 o'clock in the morning because they're hungry. Right? So I think that focusing on adult education, allowing people to enhance their careers by learning trades and skills that are in demand right now while also being able to earn a living, that's very important. I think is absolutely essential. I'm on the Detroit Mayor's Workforce Development Board, and I've had my eyes opened, even as an entrepreneur, even as a business leader in Detroit, seeing some of the struggles that my people go through. Now, I can help the couple hundred people who are under my care, but what about the other 10 million people in my state? What about the other 325 million people in the country? I think that until I hope that these leaders in Congress and in the capital cities around the country take this massive influx of money that's out there, and rather than trying to use it to buy votes, invest in the education system to make sure more money gets to the classroom, less special interests are being taken care of, and we look at outputs, we maintain accountability of how that money is being spent, and we report back to the people. I think that looking at infrastructure and food and nutrition, and looking at focusing on working adults who live in opportunity zones, I think we have to do that because again, when you're hungry, hunger doesn't care about your skin color. Poverty doesn't care about your sexual orientation or your gender. Right now, focusing on getting people the resource they need to be successful. I believe focusing on basic literacy, numeracy, essential interpersonal soft skills, training, workforce development, public-private partnerships, working with the larger businesses who need labor. Businesses are incentivized to I mean, you have McDonald's giving out $500 bonuses to show up for work. You have businesses that are shutting down production, leaving profits on the table because they can't get people to work. Now, what if they shared some of those profits, the people who would actually show up to work each and every single day? I think you have motivated businesses right now that can make long-term investments in people and train them. And I think that public-private partnerships, working to help tear down the barriers to economic opportunity for people who've been failed for generations. We have a remarkable opportunity right now to take advantage of this. And one of the things I heard and I spoke about last year was allowing a 4-day, 10-hour-a-day work week, where you can kind of work on split shifts, getting more people to work. Everybody gets their 40 hours, get the production you need, and there's data that shows that there's more productivity with having less interruptions. And then you take that extra day to spend time with your family, or to get additional education while the kids are still in school, and while the buses are still running, and while things are still open. But that's just one idea, and there's a ton of innovation that can be done when we get the special interests out and you have human beings actually engaging, focused on what the right thing is for our kids and for our adults who've been failed for so long.
We've got one final question here from a member, James, and we'll close on this. What is your opinion on raising the minimum wage? And is $7.25 per hour, is that a living wage?
Well, I can tell you that nobody at my company makes the minimum wage. I think that paying the minimum wage is, let me just say, market power has shifted to the labor force. If you pay the minimum wage, you're going to go out of business. Right now, we're bidding jobs at $17 an hour. If you bid the minimum wage, you're not going to get anybody to work. And so if you have an employer who only pays the minimum wage, they're going to get exactly what they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. This is where capitalism works. The market is speaking. Market power has shifted to the labor force. Mm-hmm. If you want to grow, mm-hmm. then you got to pay. Mm-hmm. Right? Now it's going to also force the business to do some other things. It's going to have to innovate. Right? And so if you, not you, but the collective you, if we don't give people the skills they need to innovate along with us, then I believe the education system's failed. But again, as an employer myself, nobody's getting minimum wage here because that's, for one, I don't personally believe it's the right thing to do, and two, I think that people would make the choice and they vote with their feet. They're not going to work where they're not valued, and that's fine.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. We'll leave it right there. John James, thanks so much for joining us today. It's just an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you to our members for joining us today. If you're not a member, would like to learn more, please visit us at adamsmithsociety.com. Again, our annual this year virtual conference is coming up June 7th through the 9th. It's a great program. We'll be exploring a lot of very provocative and interesting subjects all around capitalism. So please look us up for that as well, adamsmithsociety.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Mr. James, good luck on your deal coming up.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'll keep you posted.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.